to today's lesson, and this is part 3 of Killing Jesus. I want to use the microphone to make sure that the audio can be heard on the recording. So, just to review what we went over so far over the last segment, we know now that there's no Greek rendering of the spelling for Jesus inside any ancient Greek manuscripts. Every ancient Greek manuscript, the spelling for Joshua's name is different than the Greek spelling for what they call Jesus. And we also know now that Joshua's name is actually the Messiah's name. His name means salvation, or Yah is salvation. Joshua and Isaiah actually have the same name. Joshua would be YAHSHUA, some people say YAHSHUA, but pretty much in the Hebrew custom to us, that means Yah is salvation. Isaiah's name in our mother tongue would be YAHSHUA, and that means the same thing, Yah is salvation. So the history or research proves this rendering of Jesus based on the so-called Latin or Greek is really deception. No ancient Greek manuscripts have the spelling of Jesus or the characters that make the name Jesus. Every time we see the name for our Messiah in a Greek manuscript, it's actually the Greek rendering of Joshua's name. So the J being a very young sound is well researched, so that's beating a dead horse. The sound for the letter J has only come into existence since 1524, I believe. So again, the research is overwhelming. So what we're going to continue on today, to kill Jesus, we also have to kill, as a byproduct, we got to kill Christianity, because Christianity is a byproduct of Jesus, or Jesus is the king of Christianity. And to our brothers and sisters who still practice Christianity, we want them to know we're not attacking them or trying to be facetious, but we want them to know that the Christianity that our ancestors was practicing is not what they are doing. The Christianity that we come up with inside the so-called black church is not what our ancestors was doing. So we brought out last week, and I think it's a great place to pick up. If you have your scrolls with you, family, we're going to start Acts chapter 24. Acts 24, and we'll pick it up at verse 5. Acts 24, verse 5. Shemai, when you're there with me. Acts 24, verse 5.
Shema.
Shema.
And it reads, "For we have found this man a pestilent fellow and a mover of sedition among all the Jews throughout the world, and a ringleader of the sect of the Nazarenes." So, of course, if you finish this chapter, this is talking about Apostle Paul. And they got Apostle Paul on the hot seat. They're trying to persecute or crucify Paul because he's starting trouble, they're saying. But the point we want to highlight here is they say Paul is the ringleader of the sect of the Nazarenes. We were never known as Christians within the Hebrew Israelite nation. The rabbinic Jews who hated Messiah, the Sanhedrin priests, they called us Nazarenes. So within our culture, we were known as Nazarenes or Nazarites. This name Christian was coming from the Romans. The Romans was calling us Christians because that's based on their tongue or their dialect. So we don't really have a problem with the name Christian, because we can look up Christian like we did, and Christian goes back to Christos. Christos means anointed one, and we know our Messiah, Yeshua, is our anointed one who we've been waiting on. So that's not the problem we have. The problem we have, family, is the people that were first called Christians from the period of 1 AD to about 324, they were all law keepers. So now all of y'all been in this thing for a while. You see how our Christian family try to make us as like we're denying Yeshua because we're keeping the law. But let's drop down Acts 24, and let's pick up Paul's defense. Let's pick up Paul's defense. Where it is. So let's go to Acts 24 and 14. Acts 24 and 14. Shaman?
Shaman.
So Paul is answering his charges that these are fellow Jews. These are the people Paul used to run with, and now they're accusing Paul of being a heretic. And Paul says, verse 13, neither can they prove the things which they now of accuse me. Verse 14, but this I confess unto thee, that after the way which they call heresy, so worship I the God of my father, believing all things which are written in the law and in the prophets. It's funny how and I don't want to turn this into a bashing session of our brothers inside the church, but it's high time. We're at the door, family. We need them to know that we love them and they have to come out of this pagan worship. Paul never, ever, in none of his letters, told people that the law that was given to our forefathers is garbage. He never said that. He never said that. Again, Peter told them, those that are unlearned, they wrestle with Paul's speech. Paul is telling them, I follow or I worship the Most High Yah, the God of my forefathers, by everything that's written in the law and everything the prophets have said. So Paul has not ended the law, but Paul is a Nazarite. Or in the Roman tongue, Paul is a Christian. Paul is a Christian who keeps the law. So for us Nazarites, we keep the law to the best of our ability, and we have faith in YAHSHUA or Yeshua that he's coming back to save us. Khan? So now let's double back, and let's go back to Acts chapter 2.
Khan.
Let's go back to Acts chapter 2. Because Acts chapter 2, inside the romantic Christianity, is known as the day of Pentecost. And what they don't understand is, or what we were never taught because we were lost under curses, the day of Pentecost is not a one-day celebration. The day of Pentecost can be found in the Hebrew culture back in Leviticus chapter 23, called the Feast of Shabbats. You will hear some Yiddish speakers call it Shavuot. They call it Shavuot because the Yiddish speakers turn all our B's into V's because they're Germans. They can't pronounce the B properly. So the Germans turn our B's into V's, and that's how they get Shavuot. But if you go back to Leviticus 23, this is the Feast of Shabbats, or the Feast of Weeks. And Yah told us that after we finish celebrating Passover, and then we offer that wave offering, count 7 Shabbats, and then the 50th day, mark the 50th, and celebrate this feast. It's called the Feast of Shabbats. So if you've been around a seminary preacher or a seminary teacher, and there's still some websites that's up to this day, they say Acts chapter 2, the day of Pentecost, is when the Gentile church replaced the Israelite nations as God's chosen people. Their doctrine or their understanding is the day of Pentecost, the Gentile church have replaced the Israelite nation or the Jews as God's chosen people because the Jews fell and missed it when they crucified Yeshua. So now in Acts 2, it's the Gentile church and the Israelite nation. Now, some websites or some teachers will say, they won't say the Gentile church, they'll say the Church of Christ. And that's a little deception too, because all of us who love Christ, if you reject the Church of Christ, you're rejecting Christ. So they play these word games. So they say, Acts chapter 2, the Church of Christ, the born-again Church of Christ, has replaced the Israelites. So let's find out what was going on in Acts chapter 2. This is Acts chapter 2, verses 1 through 2. It says, "And when the day of Pentecost was fully come, they were all with one accord in one place." Verse 2. "And suddenly there came a sound from heaven as a rushing mighty wind, and it filled all the house where they were sitting." I repeat that. "And it filled all the house where they were sitting." Family, our ancestors here were not even in a church building. They were not in a synagogue. They were not in a temple, because these are the Israelites or Jews who were believing in Messiah, and we're still in hiding, running from the Sanhedrin priests who want to kill us too. So we're in a house, and being that we're in a house, we're keeping a Hebrew festival. We're keeping a Hebrew feast that only an Israelite would keep. No Gentile would want to keep this feast because he don't know about it. This is before Paul even had his conversion. So they're understanding that Paul went to the Gentiles, which now we know he didn't go to real Gentiles. He went to Israelites. But even if you want to hold on that Paul went and converted Gentiles, this day of Pentecost is before his conversion. So there will be no Gentiles inside this house. There will be no Gentiles inside this house. So let's drop down to Acts 2 and when did they start speaking in tongues? Acts 2 and 7. Acts 2 and 7. Because I grew up inside the church, and every Pentecost Sunday, all these preachers were laying hands on all of us and trying to get us to speak in tongues and all this mess. This is not what happened on Pentecost. Acts 2 and 7. "And they were all amazed and marveled, saying one to another, Behold, are not all these which speak Galileans?" So Galileans is a Hebrewism. Galileans is a Hebrewism. It lists all the countries where these people came from. But these were Jews. These were Jews, devout men who are clinging to the Torah. These are devout Jews or Israelites who have not forsaken the Torah or the ways that were given to Moses. Because you have to know our history. The Greeks have come through for 200 something years. A lot of our people, to avoid prosecution or persecution, or some just because they're wicked, a lot of our ancestors just adopted the Greek culture. Now the Romans are the new taskmasters, and again, the Romans came with their gods. But are the Israelites or Jews who are holding on to Moses. So they're asking, aren't these all Galileans? Now Galileans is another way to say these are Gentiles. These are Israelite Gentiles. If you go back to Matthew chapter 4, when YAHSHUA started his ministry, he started up in Galilee, and the place was called the Sea of the Gentiles, or the Sea of Galilee, and it was the land of Naphtali and the land of Zebulun. So are they all Galilean, or saying, listen, these people are all Hebrew Gentiles from northern Israel. How are they all speaking in the Hebrew tongue when they've been raised in Greek culture? They speak Greek, or the tongue of their captivity. Now they're coming back to Jerusalem, practicing or keeping a Hebrew feast. Now the Spirit has come in this house, and they're all speaking native Hebrew. What is going on here? So this wasn't everybody in this house. No, they're all speaking a Hebrew dialect of our mother tongue, and people are amazed, like, what's going on here? Now, if you finish the story, one of the apostles stand up, says, this was foretold by the prophet. This was foretold by the prophet. Now, soon he mentions the prophet, game over for any Gentiles being included, because all our prophets were sent to prophesy to Israel. So if there any doubt, any Gentile try to wiggle themselves into this day of Pentecost, once this man stood up and says, this was written of by the prophet, you're out. None of our prophets ever prophesied about Gentiles being in this thing with us. So to further prove that there's no Gentiles here, that these are all Israelite, these are all Christians keeping a Hebrew feast after the resurrection, we can go to Matthew, I didn't have it written down. Oh yeah, here it is. Matthew 10, verse 5 and 6. Let's pull that up. Matthew 10, verses 5 to 6. Matthew 10, verses 5 to 6. We want our people inside the Christian church to know that we're not trying to destroy them. We love them, and we want them to know being an Israelite, being a Torah keeper, doesn't mean we forsake the Most High, or the Messiah. It means we keep the law, statutes, commandments, and we have faith that Yeshua spilled his blood for us, and he's sitting on the right hand of Yah right now, and he's coming back to redeem us. Come. So, Matthew 10 and 5. Shaman. Matthew 10 and 5. It reads, these 12 Jesus sent forth and commanded them, saying, go not in the way of the Gentiles, and into any city of the Samaritans enter ye not. Verse 6. But go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So Yeshua himself told his disciples, the 12 plus the 70, I'm sending y'all out 2 by 2, but don't go to the Gentiles. Go looking for the lost sheep of Israel. So we can't get to Acts chapter 2 and say that this is when the Gentile church took over as God's chosen people. It's a deception, it's lies. We're at the brink of our captivity. We want our brothers and sisters inside the church to know we love them. It's time to ask these hard questions to your pastor, and it's time for them to give us some answers based on the Bible. Based on the Bible and not Greco-Roman philosophy. To be an Israelite means we keep the law, statutes, commandments the best we can, and we have faith in the King. Hallelujah. So,
hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Family, I'm going to share my screen. Let me know, again, make sure I got a connection. It may be a little delay because I'm on the mobile hotspot here. So, we have further proof that the first period of Christians, okay, we are connected. The first period of Christians were Hebrew Israelites who kept the Torah. And we got some ancient history to verify this. So I'm going to share my screen. All right, I'm just going to do this. For the sake of time, I had everything set up. I had to rebuild it when it crashed. So there's, can you all see the screen now?
Come.
Okay, all praises. So there's some ancient writings by King James, King Jacob. King Jacob, bear with me 1 second. So we have forgotten history or buried history that proves King Yaakov was indeed a Hebrew. His name, James Stewart. We said last week, you do the word search. Stewart means swarthy, means dark. And I have King James writings downloaded, so if you don't want to go get the links, just bring a flash drive or something into the Bayat, and I give you all of his writings. So on your screen, can you see the writings of King James, the political works of James the first? It's populated?
Con, I can see it.
All praises. So King James, we know, was the first king, or the reason why we have Great Britain is because of King James the First. He was the King James the First of Ireland or UK. I believe he was the sixth of Britain or something like that. But Great Britain, which is England, Ireland, and I forgot the other one. It's three nations. King James united and made it Great Britain. Well, he also has some writings, and again, I have the PDFs. So when you come in, if you want his writings, you can. I could just transfer the files to you. But in one of his writings here, this is the political works of James the First, and it got the Greek's title there. And this work is called His Majesty's Instructions to His Dearest Son, Henry the Prince. So King James is writing some letters to his son as he's a young man to let him know, when I die and you inherit the throne, this is how you to run your kingdom. And I'm going to try to read this. It says, God gives not kings the title of gods in vain. For on his throne, his scepter do they sway. And as for their subjects, ought them to obey. So kings should fear and serve their God. Again, if then ye would enjoy a happy reign, observe the statutes of your heavenly King, and from his law make all your laws to spring. So King James was a poet. I'm sorry, this poem is by a sonnet. I think it's by someone else. This may not be King James writings. But you see here, it's saying, observe the statutes of your heavenly King, and from his law make all your laws to spring. King James was a law keeper. This other snippet here, this is from another one of King James writings, and it says, I have in one point preferred our common law, concerning our use to the very law of God. Yet in another respect, I must say, both our law and all laws else are far inferior to that judicial law of God. For no book nor law is perfect nor free from corruption, except only the book and law of God. King James was a law keeper. He wrote, he got other writings where he just straight throws the popes under the bus. He throws the Jesuits under the bus, calls them demonic people. And that's why the Jesuits and the popes, they scandalized and destroyed his name after he died, saying he was a homosexual and all this mess. King James was not a homosexual. He had one wife, and he taught his sons, when they come in rulership, rule your kingdoms by the book of the law, which we call the Torah. Hallelujah. The last one here, I can't hardly see it, but this is again a snippet. He says, would ye then know your sin but by the law? Read the book of Moses, containing it. Would ye have a commentary thereupon? Read the prophets. Likewise, the books of the Proverbs and Ecclesiasticus, written by that great pattern of wisdom, Solomon. Would ye not only serve, I'm sorry, I'm struggling to see.
Which will not one.
Can you see? Which will not only serve you for instructions how to walk in the obedience of the law of God. He's telling his son, you want to know wisdom? You seek Solomon's writings. You want to know what sins you're committing? Read Moses. You want to know how to walk? You stay in obedience to the law of God. King James was a law keeper. All Christians knew we keep the Torah and we got faith in Yahshua. So let me go to another ancient writing, and bear with me here. And this is again another PDF. Family, can you see this PDF? A source book for ancient church history?
No.
Stop share.
No, I can't see it.
Okay. Let me know when it's populating.
Yeah, we can see it now.
All praises. So this is another PDF I found, and the Most High over these years, He's just bringing these things to light. A lot of brothers are sharing these PDFs. When you hear about these books, you can download these PDFs free of charge. But this was put together by this man named Joseph Cullen Ayer, and you see here we brought out that there's two periods of Christianity. There's Christianity, and this is period 2 from 100 to 140. But this is what we brought out a couple weeks ago. By the ascension of Constantine to the sole sovereignty of the Roman Empire, AD 324, ancient Christianity may be conveniently divided into two great periods. In the first, it was a religion liable to persecution. The first period of Christianity, and this is according to Romans, the first period of Christianity is marked by persecution. This is when we were being called Christians. So let's drop down and show you how we were living. So this is going to be a Roman writing back to one of the popes or kings, talking about these so-called Christians. So I start right here, and this is only found in the Syriac. He says, the Christians trace their beginnings of their religions to YAHSHUA the Messiah, and he is named the Son of the Most High. We know that, right? So it goes on, it says, but he himself was pierced. He himself was pierced by the Jews, and he died, and he was buried. And they say that after 3 days he rose and was raised to heaven. Thereupon those 12 disciples went forth into the known parts of the world, and with all modesty and uprightness taught concerning his greatness. So we know this. I'm going to read this part about the Greeks, family, and this is not bashing our peoples. Most of us got to universities when we were still children. We were 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old children, and that Greek life was exciting. If you grew up watching The Cosby Show, if you grew up watching Another World, you wanted to pledge a sorority or fraternity. There's no harm in that. That's all we understood. But how great our people would have been if those founding fathers of that Pan-Hellenic Nine, if they knew that we were actually the true Hebrews, and they started a Hebrew organization opposed to Greek letter organizations. So this is not a slight anybody. You didn't know no better. But now it's high time to awake from slumber. Paul says, when I was a child, I thought as a child. Now it's time to put away childish things. Let's read about these Greeks right here. He says, when the Greeks made laws, they did not perceive that by their laws they condemn their gods. For if their laws are righteous, their gods are unrighteous, because they committed transgressions of the law in that they killed one another, practiced sorcery, and committed adultery, robbed, stole, and lay with males. So if we knew who we were, we wouldn't have been trying to join Greek letter organizations. Furthermore, had we been fully developed adults and says, well, let me do some research, find out what these Greeks are about. These Greeks are wicked, filthy people, and we're emulating the Greeks when we join these organizations. There's a whole documentary out that this brother did exposing that whole culture. The Greek culture is full of homosexuals. So I just thought that was interesting about the Greeks there. So this is what we came for right here. It says, the Christians, O king, in that they go about and seek the truth, have found it, and have found it, and as we have understood from their writings, they have come much nearer to the truth and correct knowledge than have the other peoples. They know and trust God, the creator of heaven and earth, in whom are all things, and from whom are all things. In him who has no other God besides him. In him from whom they have received commandments, which they have engraved upon their minds, commandments which they observe in the faith and expectation of the world to come. We know as Christians or Hebrew Israelite Christians that if we keep these laws, statutes, and commandments according to his promises, when YAHSHUA returns, we shall be saved. Not now, no one is saved now, but we shall be saved if we endure to the end. That whole Christianity philosophy is deception. And it was pushed during slavery. If I could promise you a better life if you endure this affliction, just be a good Christian, well, boom, I got me a perfect slave. Matter of fact, there's a book out there, How to Make a Christian, or how to make the perfect slave or something. And that's what it says. They promised us a pipe dream of being a good Christian if we obey them, and when we die, we'll go to heaven. But the Hebrew Israelite knows, I keep the law, statutes, commandments, and according to that, when our King, the Messiah, returns, he's going to save me. But they're trying to, hallelujah, they're trying to paint us as rejecting the Messiah. Or they think they're being saved by keeping the law. No, we know it's part of our contract. When you forsake that Greco-Roman doctrine and come back to our identity, it's a package deal. It's follow this contract that your forefathers made with me and accept my son as the king. Accept my son as the only begotten king, and he's going to save you. It's a package deal. So all those who trying to smear us and lump us all up in the same bag, I pray the Most High have mercy on your soul. But we at the Torah group, we confess the name of YAHSHUA before every man. We will never recant our faith in him, and we keep this law the best we can. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. So this continues on. It says, commandments which they observe in the faith and expectation of the world to come. It goes on saying we don't commit adultery. They see that we're not separating the law from YAHSHUA. It says, and if they has the screen populated, family? Is it? I don't want to jump ahead if y'all can't see the screen. Okay, all praises. So it says, and if they hear that one of them is imprisoned or oppressed on account of the name of their Messiah, all of them care for his necessity. And if it is possible to redeem him, they set him free. This is the Torah. If one of us, if my brother sells himself to another nation, to another pagan nation, I have to go redeem him. If he sells himself to me as a servant, then according to our Torah, after 7 years, I must release him back to his own tribe with money and wealth, unless he says he wants to stay with me. This is Torah, family. The first Christians were Torah keepers. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. So